Hi, Alistair.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me for this series of conversations that I'm having with people that I know and care about around this topic of well-being, which I know is something that's very close to your heart as well. So those that perhaps don't know, it's Global Wellbeing Week, which is running from the 21st to the 30th of June. And I had this idea, I wanted to have conversations with different people about well-being in the context of their lives, how that fits in with them, what their view is, and also with the hope that that would also get the people watching and listening thinking about well-being in the context of their lives. So it's really great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for asking me.
So for those that may not have come across you before, Alistair, do you want to share a little bit about you?
A little bit about me.
Yes.
So I left the world of organisation a few years back to work for myself. And I started off with the label of being a coach. My intention is to help folks in whatever context that is. Often it's in the workplace, but I do more deeper and personal work with folks now, so it's not work related, it's not workplace related. I don't actually like the label coach anymore because I don't think that says what I do.
Okay.
And I haven't settled on the label that I do enjoy, so I'm just going to talk to you about what goes on for me.
Okay.
I guess my energy and my question has now become a fairly deeper question about who are we? Who am I? Can you answer the question, who am I, without using I'm a dad, I'm a mum, I'm a daughter, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a director, I'm a manager. Can you answer the question without using one of those kind of labels? And what I found by asking that question is most folks can't. They get a bit stuck and very often get a bit cross with me for asking the question. Because what I realised as my own learning and my own journey through my own development was that I always defined myself by the things I did. And that became a risk because by defining myself by the things that I do, I'm then setting a performance bar for myself, and therefore I can either hit it or miss it, in which case I'm happy or I'm sad, I'm cross or I'm happy. So it was, how do I define myself without using the label?
Yeah.
And that leads me then to kind of working. When we went into our first lockdown one, I decided at that point I was going to stop doing group work. I've been doing a lot of group work for a very long time. And it's personal development group work. And then the sort of so since kind of March last year right through now, most of my work is one-to-one stuff.
Okay.
It's one-to-one stuff, and it's exploring for folk where are they stuck, where are they struggling, what's going on for them. The contexts often change. So sometimes their context will be the workplace, sometimes their context will be the home, sometimes the context is themselves a bit of a lost self. So whatever the context is, the questions that I ask and the way in which I do my work is always how do we find an answer to who we are and then move forward from there. Not sure if that answers your question, and I'm not sure if I know the answer to it in the first place, but that's what I'm saying.
What really resonated here, Alistair, in what you're saying is this how we label ourselves and how we present ourselves and how we introduce ourselves to others, and I think that that's a real deep societal kind of challenge that we have always had going on, because that's the first thing. What's your name? What do you do? So it goes hand in hand. That's my identity. That's my brand. And so, kind of really unpicking and kind of helping somebody to get underneath all of that, I can, and I know that we've done so much work together, haven't we? And you certainly helped me to do that back in Tesco days. Were instrumental in me kind of following my purpose and kind of learning more about who I am and what I need to help me to be kind of happy and content. So this word well-being, I was actually having a conversation yesterday with a friend, and she asked me the question, so what's the difference between well-being and mindfulness? Which I thought was a really curious question. But if we just come back to, for you, what does well-being mean to you? It's quite a big question, I think, but we'll see what you say.
I take the two words separately. I say, what does well mean?
Yeah.
And what does being mean? And then somewhere along the line they may merge. And I think well means in context of mentally well, physically well, emotionally well. And I think there's a big part that maybe is missing out of some of our lives, which is spiritually well as well. And those four, in my mind, separate out as four different energies. You'll have heard me talk about energy before. And it's the overlap and the integration of those energies which I think creates the wellness. And when you've got one of those energies out of alignment, then it's likely that we're, I won't say unwell, but maybe that's the answer. So for me, it's about the energies, it's about being aware of where we are in those particular ways of seeing ourselves. And then so that's well, and then there's being. How am I being? All too often we're doing. So we're not human beings, we're human doings. And how do I come back to being me as the first place I go, rather than solving the problem or making the decision or doing that other stuff? How do I make sure I ground myself first? I don't have to be taking hours to do the grounding process if I practice long enough.
Yeah.
I can ground myself reasonably quickly, but grounding myself in who I am before I go and do stuff, I think is really helpful. And I spent years not being able to do that. I spent years building a career on doing.
Yeah.
And I guess, if I'm honest, I was reasonably successful in doing the doing.
Mm.
And because that worked, why would I want to look in any other direction? But it wasn't until a number of different sequences and events occurred in my life where I started to realise that although I was doing, I really wasn't sure who the hell I was, what I was doing it. And that was showing up in the way I presented myself. That was evident, I think, from me. I wasn't comfy in my own skin, but I kind of bluffed it and blanked it long enough to get away with it. But the challenge then, I think, therefore, of finding out who we are and finding out our light side and our dark side, the shadow stuff that exists within us all, being aware of that.
Yeah.
And being comfortable in the discomfort of that dark side. That's helped me understand who I am, which then helps my wellness and my beingness. So having a deeper understanding of who I am and how come I came that way has helped. And you mentioned there, mindfulness. So I teach mindfulness. Run meditation classes. I also use sound as part of meditation, hence the metal that sits behind me. And it's a deeper exploration of who I am, because the more I understand myself, the more I get into, then I can develop strategies for dealing some of the parts of me that still kick up and cause me problems, and my mental processing isn't always great. But that causes me anxiety. Okay, so my wellness has got out of alignment. How do I bring that back to being more grounded, more central, more aligned? For years I used to try and do it just in my head. I knew it didn't work, but I kept on trying it just in case it would. And then I realised, get out of your head, get into the body, get into the full experience of being me. Look at my energetic self as well as my cognitive self, and that's really helped me. Helped me to stay grounded. Helped me to stay more present. And in doing that with others, I can see others understanding themselves more, and that's helping them in their well-being or being well, whichever way you would put those two words together.
Yeah, and I know we've done work using sound, amongst many other things, and that. And I'm sure that this will resonate with lots of people that are listening to this. When the mind is so busy, when we attempt practices that are connecting, with the mind and using the mind in order to access the body, you can just come up. It can just be, a blocker. And of course, it depends, because you might get that anyway. But certainly, I found and find at points that a guided meditation, you taking me through a body scan, it's just not happening. I'm not feeling anything in my body because this is getting in the way. And the thing that I absolutely love about the using sound is my mind fights it for the first 5, sometimes even 10. And the other week when we were doing it, it was almost the whole of the session. My mind was like, no, you're not coming through. And then all of a sudden, there was just this shift. And it just surrendered, and I just felt the ease through the body and the different sensations. And that last 10 minutes, it was if I'd had a 2-hour, sound bath, and the impact was absolutely amazing. So I totally kind of believe and I'm a huge advocate for using these different methods to help us to tune into our bodies and to help us to kind of get to know ourselves a little bit better as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you described there, which was great, which was that. So I started off using various means to help folks become grounded and understand themselves more and more, but it was all head-based. It was all entirely head-based. And I did that for myself. I knew it wasn't working, but I didn't know what the other options were. So I kind of went from that way of seeing things into, okay, so let's go down the meditation route. And for me, largely meditation works. And I know, as you described it, there are folks out there for whom meditation is kind of what? No. So I kept on exploring to see, well, if one part of this, fighting it with the head, doesn't always work, then working with meditation doesn't always work. What can we move on to that will help us find some peace and quiet? And there's a whole load of science behind why sound works. But to your point, you can fight the sound coming out of these things for as long as you like. But if you sit there long enough, you will surrender because there is something happening. The sound waves are balancing the brain. So the frequency that comes out of the sound here, the gongs, actually the brain then starts to entrain with the sound waves, and so you just get harmony. And that's where you then get stuck, and that's the point at which the brain opens up. You shift from the logical problem-solving space into the much more creative, open space. So, folks have absolutely said that, experiencing sound in the way you've just described it there, that last 10 minutes felt like it was hours. You lose track of time, you lose track of space, and the mind just opens up. It's got rid of all its constructs, it's got rid of all its, for the moment, within the sound. And I'm finding that folks are really kind of connecting with this idea that there's another way of experiencing the mind other than the structures and the boxes that we create, the labels we create. There's another way of experiencing the moment through sound waves.
Yeah, it's so powerful. So powerful. Okay, I want to take you back a bit. So over the past year, 18 months, during the pandemic, And you spoke about, for you, we've got well and we've got being, and we've got well in terms of the different energies, and and sometimes they go out of alignment, and then being, how am I being? So I just want to find out for you, how was your well-being impacted over the last year or so?
I think the phrase I kept hearing at the start of the first lockdown is it's all going to be different when we get back. Mm-hmm. And I kept arguing with that in my own mind, because it was never going to be different unless we were. We were going to be different. The world's still going to have a virus in it. Mm. So the challenge, I think, that I looked at for myself was, how am I going to be different? How am I going to be, how am I going to take this opportunity to take a better look at myself? My business, quite rapidly, so that all the work that I had planned just disappeared. And so I was having to reshuffle them, and the nature of my business, the same as others. But what I realised from that was that brought up a shed load of fear. And what I came to realise over the time was that fear was hugely attached to a need to be safe and secure. And the safety and the security comes with a bit of cash coming into the bank. It's the simplicity of money in, money out.
Yeah.
And when that money bit was kind of under threat, then my whole body, mind was kicking up. And it was quite challenging to be with me at the time when that was happening. And so, I spoke to a number of different folks around this stuff. And I just experimented more and longer meditation in order to keep myself. So, I'd get up early to do it. So I've still got to find work. I've still got to do work. But I committed myself to doing meditation for myself. I offered meditation to others, and of course, while I'm leading others on their meditation, then I'm doing it for me as well. So I'm getting a double dose. Yeah. Thank you very much. But being still for a longer period of time and practicing being still, even though things were still quite chaotic, was a real insight for me. Stillness and silence, and creating it consciously inside of me so that I could tap into it as an energy, helped me then see things differently. And that's what I think the sound stuff does. It's not about creating something and then leaving it and walking on, jumping back into all that stuff. It's from a space of stillness and from a space of silence. What does the world then look like? How can it be different for me once I've reduced my fears, my anxiety in a way that works? So I think, the lockdown has caused me to see my business in a different way, but has caused me to see a challenge for myself in a different way, to be more still and practice more silence for longer periods of time. It doesn't mean that I'm locked away doing meditation 24/7 and not connecting with the world, because I still want to connect with the world in the way the world exists. And that can be a challenge as well, because you bump into people who don't see it the way you see it. So you're kind of course correcting yourself fairly regularly, which is challenging. It's challenging to do that. And yet I've seen the benefit for me of being still, being silent, practicing it consciously. And we've talked about a compassionate self, coming back to the self and befriending me rather than beating me up, which is my old style. Recognizing some of my beliefs about I'm not good enough, I'm not this enough, that enough, the other enough. Recognizing those coming up. And of course, when you're under threat because the income is dropping, those things get louder. Yeah, they do. How can I make some sort of peace with that? How do I find a way of reducing the volume in order to find a way forward? And I think that's what the pandemic has taught me, that when I got locked down with myself, it became a challenge. Can I choose someone else? Anyone else will do, because being locked in with me just isn't always that much fun. But you learn to, or I've learned to look at myself in different ways and through different perspectives, which I wouldn't have done if I'd have been loaded so much with fear and worry and stressy stuff. That could never have happened.
Yeah. And I think there's well, what do you think? I mean, my sense is that with fear, whatever that fear is for us, there's almost a fear to look at the fear and why the fear is there. And so there's a pushing it down or burying the head or pushing it away for fear of what might come up for us. And for a lot of people, it's that emotion, which again, there's a whole construct around maybe how we've been brought up and whether emotions are acceptable or not acceptable. I'm just wondering whether you've got any comments on that, about kind of how people, that have that tendency to deal with fear.
I think you're right. We often learn through whatever route it might be that the answer is to push it down. Mm-hmm. Personally, I've found white wine quite good for pushing it down. Guinness is good at doing it as well. Yeah. And Cadbury's Dairy Milk has got a whole level of its own. But I think when you're pushing it down, it's stored in some way, shape, or form, and at some point it will show itself up. Mm. Probably in my case, shouting at somebody and telling one of my boys off or anything. Mm. So it's not helpful. And I think what I've learned over time is that the more we can just kind of be comfortable with letting it out in order to experience what's behind it. When I work with folk, I kind of go, when you ask the question, who are you? They're afraid of letting go of all the labels because they think behind the label there's nothing. Mm. What the hell do I want to find nothing for when I've got all these labels?
Yeah.
Same with fear. If I let go of all the fear, what am I going to find behind it? And what I've learned over the last 18 months is the more that I work towards being in the space behind the fear, being in the space behind the label, the more that space is open and clear, and I can then see things differently. Mm. So I think to your point, yes, we are often encouraged to shut the worry, all that stuff down. Mm. We find strategies to deal with it. We overeat, we over-exercise, we over this, we over that. Walking into it, facing into it, in order to find out what's beyond it, I've found much more a useful strategy.
Yeah, I do. I definitely agree with you. I've been doing a lot more on that over the last 2 years, probably, actually. And there's something about, by doing that, it almost reduces the power. It almost disperses and kind of, changes it into a different emotion, a different sensation, a different kind of thought process that you have, because almost you're inviting it rather than denying it.
Yeah, it's a lovely way of putting it. So, if I can be with it, whatever the energy, whatever the emotion is, and I think it's being with the energy, being with the emotion, not agreeing with the cause of it.
Yeah.
So you're just looking at the energy itself.
Yeah.
It's a pure examination of this experience in my body right here, right now. Mm. Not, I'm going to run the story that got me there, because that will just feed more into him. So when we can start to reduce and release the energy, okay, now how can I reframe what's happened in a way that doesn't push my button or cause me anxiety or stress me out?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's using the stillness as a practical tool to reframe the cause in the first place in order to move on. And some things I'm not saying you can therefore forgive everything and forget and move on. It's not like that. But just see it in a different way that allows me to move on or beyond or through whatever the trigger was, in a way that I feel more grounded while I'm doing it. Or I'm angry, and I'm happy that I'm angry. I'm going to be angry, so I'm going to, I'm going to have anger inside of me and I'm going to be with it, rather than my anger's having me and forcing me to react in a way that I don't want to.
Yes.
So it's changing relationship with emotion as well.
Yeah, changing that relationship with emotion. Yeah, I really, really like that. And so
you can't, because if we say, if we say don't have emotions, then we've gone away from the being part of well-being. Because as beings, we are emotional creatures. We have to have a way of understanding them. And in the understanding, work with them, and in the working with them, find the peace and quiet that is beyond them. Because it's like flying, isn't it? You fly through the turbulence, and eventually you find the clear air. Flying through that emotion, that turbulence of that emotion, to sit in the clear air beyond it, I now know to be a better strategy than some of the ones I've used in the past.
I like that visual of flying through the turbulence. I must remember that, Alistair. Must remember that one.
Dealing with pride, it's yours now. You hear it here. Take it away.
Thank you. So let me just ask one. I'm just going to ask the second to the last question. So, is there anything else that contributes towards your well-being?
Friends, conversations, open space, nature, love the sea, a Labrador called Lusa, who you know. So there's all of that stuff. Music. I think it's, I love being out in nature. I love the feel of nature. I love particularly being water. I'm an earthy-based kind of person. But I love just the experience of being near rivers, streams, sea, anything that's watery. And I think I love gardening, and I love being with plants, and I love that, just being outdoors, but connecting, being an earthy person. I just love earth.
Yeah.
Please don't knock me up for that one. But there's something about getting your hands in the earth and getting it's lovely. Great. Sand. I love the feel of sand. So I think there's knowing what it is that works for you, and consciously making space to do whatever that is, with the intention of it re-energizing, I think is a kind of a useful strategy to also have, rather than going for a walk in nature but taking your phone with you and being on that all the time and texting. Leave that. That will work when you come back. I've started to use social media less, because I don't like what I see. It triggers me. It triggers me in different ways. I either don't like what I see and I'm judging of it. It makes me feel inadequate because I haven't got one of those and I don't look like that. So I compete with people that I do want to be like and all that sort of stuff. So let that go. In order to keep coming back to the grounded me, in order to keep coming back to just being grounded and pushing on with my work. And bizarrely, as I move forward with my work is more coming in different directions now that I would never have experienced before. So, it's not about... Sometimes I think when folks get to hear the meditation word, they get a picture of a Zen-like monk sitting in the corner, kind of just doing stuff. Taking the benefits of meditation and using them practically in the way the world exists today is what's important to me. How do I make this applicable to the experience that I have that's called my life? And then when I've learned from that, how do I bring that to others? And hopefully, so I know we have overrun meditation for some folks who come with business problems. They will meditate on a business problem. So we will open up the mindset. They drop in the problem and then just see what pops up. And quite often solutions will come. Why? Because you're not chasing it. It's that moment of when does the answer come up, when I'm least expecting it to, when I'm at my most relaxed and my most open. The answer will come through. So creating practical use for meditation and compassion and all those other stuff that goes with mindfulness. I'm finding really helpful for me and for others.
So, as we end the conversation then, Alistair, if you had one piece of advice or a recommendation for people that can enhance their well-being in some way, what would that be?
I think there's, first of all, look to connect with your true self.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that is a simple sentence, but probably quite a big journey.
Yeah, I was going to say, might take a little while. It took me quite a while.
It's not going to be done by Friday afternoon, 3:30. That's not the way it works. So I think it's commit to yourself. Commit to the sense of self and start to understand when the mind is taking you into a bit of a rabbit hole, but practice having something in here that you come back to that grounds you. In order to get there, you've got to get on some sort of a practice journey and keep on working it. Find a good teacher that can support you, or folks around you, or groups. And I know you're on various groups. Connect with people, but have a real strong intention to connect to yourself. Not this version of you, because this version of you isn't always reliable. But there's a stronger sense in here of you. Find what that is, connect with it, and practice coming back to it time and time again. Because this thing will take you away from here, in my experience. What goes on here, the reactive mind, the fearful mind, the scared mind, that keeps pulling you in directions. Practice coming back. And the longer you can practice coming back, my experience, I feel more grounded in my own world. But it's a practice. They call it practice for a reason. You have to keep doing it. It's not I've done it once and it works. That's just because this thing keeps getting in the way.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But actually, this thing and that thing. So there's two things going on here. There's what's going on in here. There's what's going on out there. So the two things kind of work together. That will kind of somehow pull you away from a stronger sense of who you are and yourself.
Yeah, like constantly fighting for your attention. Everything is fighting for your attention away from actually who you are. That's a really great piece of advice. Go on.
No, I could go on for another half an hour, but you're going to tell me in a minute that's the last question. It's time to shut up. So I get it. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, we'll do another. We'll do a part 2. I think that there's lots of
series.
Thank you so much for your time today, Alistair. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
You're very welcome. And thank you for taking time to create space for talking to folks like me, because I think the more someone like you does that for other people, then the more people can see things in a different way and perhaps find a bit of peace and quiet themselves. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. Take care for now.
And you. Bye-bye.